Hi everybody, welcome to the video devotion for today. And today we're in Deuteronomy chapter 24, verse 1. Suppose a man marries a woman, but she does not please him. Having discovered something wrong with her, he writes a document of divorce, hands it to her, and sends her away from his house. Well, that's pretty easy for the guy, anyway. Just send him away from his house. Now, Jesus will talk about this same thing when he teaches about marriage in Matthew chapter 5. He talks about divorce. In verse 31, he says, "You have heard the law that says a man can divorce his wife by merely giving her a written notice of divorce. But I say that a man who divorces his wife, unless she has been unfaithful, causes her to commit adultery, and anyone who marries her, a divorced woman, also commits adultery." Well, this has bothered divorced people for a long time in churches and pastors and other people that I've talked to. Jesus is, in the Sermon on the Mount is really, really harsh, at least from our standard. But what Jesus is doing is getting at the heart, at our hearts. And in this adultery was considered a great offense because marriage is so much like God's relationship with us. In fact, oftentimes God will talk about his relationship with us as though he's married and we're the whoring wives going off to other gods. In fact, in Ezekiel, he graphically condemns the people of Israel for spiritual adultery, not just because they went and worshiped pagan idols, but also because they also got condemned when Israel's heart and eyes desired different gods. So they hadn't even done it yet, but their hearts and their eyes were desiring a different God. And that's why one of the things Jesus says too in this same chapter. He says, if you even look at a woman with lust in your heart, you've already committed adultery with her. Because to God, the most important relationship between he and us is our loyalty, our love to God, and not going after idols. And also in a marriage, the most important thing is your spouse, and devoting your life to your spouse and giving yourself, becoming one. To become one means that you give up yourself to make that happen. So what do we say to people who've been divorced? What do we say to all of us who have really committed adultery in our hearts at the very least, or have lusted after another woman or another man while we're married to someone else? Well, what that says is our hearts are far away from God, and that we're not anywhere close to what God wants, expects, or wanted to begin with, as far as where our hearts were. So what's the answer to that? Well, the answer to that is always the same, because as sinners, we can't change our own hearts. No matter how much law we bring down on how you should or what you should do, this isn't going to change inside here until something else happens. And what happens, and what can happen, is God in Jesus Christ through the Holy Spirit can change our hearts. You know that song, "Change my heart, O God, make it ever true." Well, that is what happens. God can come into our hearts, our lives, and change us from the inside out, so that we do love our spouses. We don't lust after other people or think that somehow another marriage is going to be better. Just a little practical advice in all the counseling I've done with people who have gotten divorced or whatever, they always see this grass greener on the other side. Well, let me tell you, that's a fantasy. The grass is not greener on the other side. You are married. If you are married, you are to remain married. If you've gotten divorced, there is forgiveness of sins. And nobody wants to be divorced. I think you'd rather cut off your right arm than be divorced. And we have all sinned. That's the thing that gets missed. When divorced people feel bad, we miss the fact that all of us have not been right in our hearts. All of us have lusted after other people. All of us have not given our all to our marriage because our hearts are not right. And that's the message for today. If there is something about your heart that isn't right, the answer to that is Jesus Christ, who comes into our hearts through the power of the Holy Spirit and can change our hearts. Pray and ask God to change your heart in areas of your life that you know are not even close to the standard that God has for us. God bless you and have a good day.